welcome to Hold Fast, where we have biblical truths for daily battles. My name is Kenny. I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm actually joined today by another friend, Mr.
Nate O'Brien.
Nathaniel.
When I'm in trouble.
Nathaniel, yep. All right. So I actually just recorded an episode with Nate on another podcast I'm a part of called the Calford Catechism. I'd encourage you to check that out. But today on Hold Fast, we are going to talk about, the title of this episode is how are you eating, or something like that. We're going to title it, what's your intake, what's your food like, what's your diet like? And we're talking spiritually.
Yeah, what's your spiritual diet like?
Yes. How are you eating? And I'm not saying, what did you have for dinner last night? I'm asking you, where are you getting your sermon content from? Mm-hmm. Like what pastors are you watching on social media or TikTok? TikTok theologians is technically a thing, even though it shouldn't be.
I'm not on the TikTok, and my heart is sad when I hear that.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok either, but I do hear that. Yes.
Okay.
So, but also, what about the worship music that you sing and that you listen to? Are the lyrics of those songs truly feeding your soul? Or are they giving you some bad theology? And this is an important conversation. This is a daily battle, because we are being inundated with information overload all the time and I would say specifically in our social media feeds, but even in our churches. We go to Bible studies and small groups that push curriculum on us at times, and we don't. Where are you getting that from? We have devotional books galore, people just pushing this book and that book and read this and this is going to change your life. So we want to talk about, where are you getting your food from, and how should we be thinking about this? So you want to give me some initial thoughts here as we get going?
I mean, we all go somewhere for comfort. We go somewhere for nourishment. And I'm speaking about where we go to consume things when we want to rest, when we want to recharge. And for some of us, we're not even getting to anything with spiritual content. We might go to a Netflix show, or we might go to movies or video games or something to get that for us. And so that would be the junk food.
Right.
That would be, and you're right, I think they're advertising pretty heavily for junk food right now. The Krispy Kreme banner would be over across the street. It'd be like 73 feet long. So
Yes.
if we are snacking on spiritual food as well, are we checking the ingredients?
Yeah.
I've got a weird diet, so I've always got to check like what's in the ingredients, because there's probably something in there that would bring people joy that I can't have.
Yeah.
So are we checking the content of the spiritual food that we're consuming?
Yeah. No, this is, I think, one of the biggest concerns I have with Christianity here in America today. Is there are a lot of Christians who are consistently consuming unbiblical content, and just because it has the name of Christ attached to it, they think it's okay. So let's start this way. How do we check the ingredient list? How do we discern, how do we begin to discern what is good spiritual food and what is not? And this relates to, again, the sermons we listen to, the books that we read, and the songs that we sing even. How do we check the ingredient list?
So when I started to check food for what wonderful things that I could not consume, I had to educate myself on what those things were. Because a lot of times when you're reading the ingredients labels, mallohalodextrin, and I'm making that word up, high fructose corn syrup, I didn't know what any of that was.
Right.
You're welcome. And I didn't know the effects that it had. So I had to find a source where I could get that information, educate myself so that I could discern good from bad. And in the same way, the Bible would be our education. It would be our guide to discern good and bad theology, good, bad content, good, bad ingredients. Also, I might want to consider, why am I going towards certain preachers? Why would I go towards certain songs? Would it be just because I like how they sound? Maybe I like just the music, without checking the content.
Yeah.
And I can get caught up in that just because I like how something sounds. I like that person and how they speak.
Yeah.
But I'm not holding that content to the book.
Yeah. Well, and maybe the best illustration of how we should do this is the Bereans in Acts. Paul's preaching to
They're
them.
my spirit animals.
The gospel. Yeah. Paul's preaching the gospel to them, and they basically go, man, this sounds great. We love it, but we're going to go check this ourselves.
One of my favorite stories, the Apostle Paul shows up.
Yeah.
Signs, miracles were following the guy. Yeah. He presents the saving gospel. They were Bible readers, and they said, we love that. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We're going to study this.
Dude, people were literally taking Paul's handkerchief and being healed.
Right.
And still the Bereans were like, that's awesome.
We're going to check this out.
But we're going to check this out. Yeah.
Can we get a handkerchief? But we're also going to check this out tonight.
I think one of the biggest pitfalls for a lot of Christians today is if somebody, has the right language, they're talking about Jesus, if they're charismatic enough, they're engaging, they're fun, they use good illustrations, then I'm going to listen to them. They must be trustworthy. And that's a terrible place to be.
And a lot of times we do a measure of what we're consuming, we go by our emotion. So how did it make me feel versus what was the content?
Yep.
And I can feel really good after watching a show on Netflix that has nothing to do with Christ. I can feel pretty refreshed, but that feeling isn't true.
Right.
As believers, we're in a constant battle against our own flesh and against the world around us until Christ comes again. And I need to arm myself for that battle and feed myself good ingredients so that I can sustain that for myself, for my family, for the church.
Yep.
And so that battle for me is, am I checking the content? And if the content's not there, why am I holding on to it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and we just, we live in I've been using this illustration a lot lately, so I'm going to go for it again. We have hot pocket Christianity, where we want a
cold on the outside and lava hot in the middle.
No, it's the opposite. Actually,
it's
the opposite for the Christian. No, we want things quick and easy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care if it's really nourishing,
as
long as it fills our stomach. And and that's our mentality with sermons and with music and with the books that we read. We're like, man, this made me feel good. It satisfied what I was looking for, so let me move on.
It's like donuts.
And then you end up malnourished, and you wonder, how did I get here?
You can eat donuts for every meal. Kenny could eat Krispy Kreme donuts for every meal. Feel full.
I could.
And no nutritional value whatsoever.
Yep. And then eventually I would pass out and
sweat glaze.
That'd be incredible.
That would be horrible.
That'd be incredible.
Then that's what happens when we consume horrific spiritual content.
We sweat glaze.
We ooze the glaze. I got nothing.
That's right. No, and that's, the other side of this is that I think a lot of Christians, they hear what we're saying and they go, yeah, this is right. I agree. We should check what we're doing. But they don't do the work. And that's the part of this conversation that's so crucial. This takes work.
Well, it does. And it's the work that's actually worth the effort, because you are, in a sense, mining for Christ. You are working hard to uncover His beauty, His majesty. And you don't get to do that unless you have the information that's right and good about Him.
Yep.
I can listen to, I don't know how many songs on a popular Christian radio, and I'm not hearing truths about Christ.
Yeah.
I have to get the content that reflects Scripture. That's going to pull me closer to Him. I might not initially feel good about it because it takes effort. I might have to toss some songs out. I might have to pull some songs in, and maybe that song had an organ. I don't love organs. But that content is amazing. Can I just focus on the content?
Well, and I won't get too deep into this, but here at MissionWay, we, about a year ago now, maybe a little bit more, we did make a decision to be a lot more intentional and conscious about the music that we sing on Sundays. Even at times saying, I'm not going to sing songs from this particular artist or this particular church, because even though every now and then they might have a good song, overall they're teaching bad theology, and I don't want to consume that. And so that kind of leads me into another question that I really wanted to ask and talk about here. Okay, but can't we just kind of eat the meat and spit out the bones in this conversation?
I absolutely hate that phrase. If the bones can kill you, wouldn't I just eat the meat?
Yeah.
Like when you're eating ribs, you're not eating the bones. You pull the meat off the bones, which is not maybe a great analogy, but I want to look at it this way. So when somebody comes to me and goes, can I just eat the meat and spit out the bones? That's like telling me I have a gallon of beautiful clear water, and I'm just going to put a half a teaspoon of raw sewage in that. It's mostly pure water.
Yeah.
Would you drink it?
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, well, no.
Yeah.
That's potty water now, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
So why would I consume something that could be potentially harmful to myself? Because I've got a family, I've got a wife, I've got 2 boys, and I don't want them to consume that either. Mm-hmm. So in addition to that, if I'm able to be more discerning and I'm able to pull bones from meat or whatever, they might not be able to discern the difference, and so they'll consume it completely without being able to do that. So in my head, why wouldn't I find the purest, grass-fed, sung to, organic Wagyu meat of the sweet Bible.
Amen.
And consume that, especially when it's free.
Only eat Wagyu. That's the message.
I've never
today.
ate Wagyu,
Me
but want
either,
to one
actually.
day. If you have Wagyu and you want to support us in this podcast,
that's all I need. I mean, that'd be amazing. And I think so. Let's use the illustration again of food. It's working so well here, and I love talking about food.
I'm really hungry.
We're gonna go have burgers after this. If you were trying to eat a healthy diet, right? And so you said, I'm gonna eat clean, I'm gonna eat healthy, but every other meal was Krispy Kreme donuts. Is that a healthy diet?
It's not a healthy diet.
No matter how much healthy meals you have,
right.
If every other meal is donuts, it's not a healthy diet.
No.
And that's true spiritually as well. If you're listening to some solid teaching,
right,
and then you go off and you say, well, I kind of like what this other person says too. It's not really as solid, but I like listening to them. That's not a healthy spiritual diet.
And that's convicting. And so are we saying you can never just watch something to be amused by it, to be entertained by it?
Right.
I don't think we're saying that. I'm saying even in your entertainment,
right,
what am I consuming? How is it affecting me? Is it something that's bringing me closer to Christ? Is it something that's pulling me away from Him?
Yep.
One of my mentors always pointed out the word amusement means without musement, thinking. So no thinking, no thought.
Yeah.
So that has been convicting too, because you're right. You can make it through several weeks of you're kept to your strict diet. You did great, and then you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna have a cheat day.
Yeah.
And you just go crazy.
Yeah.
You never feel good after that.
No.
Although it tastes delicious.
No, and that's really important. I think one other part of this conversation that I want to say, and this may, I'm glad I have Nate here because this may sound self-serving of me to talk about this, so I may let Nate talk more about it. But you should, when you're talking about listening to sermons and listening to other pastors preach, stop sacrificing listening to your pastor for the sake of these online pastors. So there are a lot of people who say, I love my church and I love my pastor, but man, he's not that great of a teacher, or, I don't really he's not as engaging. So I'm going to go listen to this guy who I really do like to listen to. And that's where I'm going to get my sermon content, but I get my fellowship at my church. Is that a healthy perspective?
I would say no in this regard. So the Bible says for me to plug into a local congregation, to love one another, support one another, encourage one another. I'd be hard-pressed to be able to do that when I'm not hearing the same message they're hearing. How are we on the same page, moving in the same direction? Now, am I saying you can't ever listen to other pastors? I would say you ought to listen to your pastor first.
Yeah.
And then if you want to consume sound biblical teaching throughout the week as well, do that.
Well, and I'm not even talking about the amount of time. So for example, if I'm the guy who is preaching most Sunday mornings, but if I were a part of a church, I'm listening to my pastor once a week give a sermon, but I may be listening to 5 or 6 other sermons throughout the week. So I'm not talking about the amount of time you spend. I'm talking about the value that you place on it. So you've got a spiritual question that you're trying to wrestle through. Before you search YouTube, go to your pastor. That's the
absolutely
one of your elders. Those are the people that are responsible for your soul ultimately, that should be pouring into you, and challenge them on that. Let them minister to you in that way first.
And I think that's why your pastor is your pastor.
Right.
They want to care well for you, and if you're struggling through a particular issue and they're blissfully unaware of what you're struggling through, they're not going to be able to love you well, to shepherd you well, and to care for you well. And the pastor you're listening to who doesn't know you doesn't have to give an account for you later. Be helpful. Help your pastor. They might not know the answer initially, but I don't know very many good ones who won't try to find it. Pretty quick.
That's good. Any other thoughts on this?
Eat good. Eat good.
All the grammar Nazis just exploded. They went spontaneous combustion real quick. Eat well. Eat well.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Eat good. Eat good. Let me close it out this way. I'm challenging you, if you're listening to this, to evaluate your diet, your spiritual diet. What are you listening to? What content, and I'm talking about spiritual content, what content are you consuming? Is it biblical? Is it true? Is it right? Or are you simply entertained by it and comforted by it, which ultimately, if it's not biblical, you're not getting true comfort. You're not getting true nourishment. So evaluate the things that you're consuming. I'm talking about the sermons you listen to, the social media clips that you engage with, the music that you listen to, the worship music, Christian music, the books that you read, all of those things. Evaluate that content. Ask yourself, is this a healthy spiritual diet? And if you're not sure if it is, reach out to your pastor. Reach out to a trusted Christian friend and say, help me evaluate this. Let's do this together. We said earlier, it's hard work, but it's one of the most worthy pursuits that you will ever have in your life, is to ask yourself, what content am I consuming? What's my spiritual diet, and is it healthy?
Is this bringing me closer to Christ? He is the one and only sole source of comfort that you're looking for rest that you're looking for. He is the source of everything you're after.
Yep.
And if you're like me, we can get sidetracked and go after these things and other things that will not satisfy us.
Yep.
So are you getting closer to Christ?
Yep. It's a good word. It's a good way to end it. Well, thanks for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.
On 2 episodes now. So again, check out the Calvary Catechism, where Nate and I discussed what must I believe to be saved. Yeah. And then this episode where we're talking about just our overall spiritual diet and the content that we consume. I pray that it's an encouragement to you. Thanks as always for listening. It is helpful to this podcast if you give us a rating or review, because then people who don't know about this podcast get to see it. It shows up in their search a lot more. So thanks again for being a part of this episode. I'll be back next week, Lord willing, with another one. God bless.
God bless.